This Tim Albright with AVNation with an AVNation special, taking a look at the SCN Hall of Fame for the class of 2021. And with me is my very dear friend, Jeremy Caldera from IAS. Welcome, sir.
Hello, how are you today?
I am well, and congratulations on making the Hall of Fame for 2021. I do believe you are the youngest member of this class. Am I incorrect in saying that?
I don't feel the youngest, but I think I am the youngest based on the class. That is for sure, yes.
How about this? You don't look the youngest. Does that help?
That probably helps too, yes. Yeah.
I say that, Jeremy.
I am 40 this year, Tim.
Oh,
so.
you poor thing.
I know.
So I say that tongue-in-cheek. Jeremy is considerably younger than I am, but I have a full head of hair and he doesn't. So, there's that.
Mine's by choice mostly, though.
Mostly. I guess mine's technically by choice too. I mean, I could shave it, but why?
Well.
I mean, it's there. Let's start this. It kind of like we started a lot of these. And it's a fun question to ask anybody in the industry because there are roughly like 3 or 4 ways you get in the industry, right? And historically it always ends up with, well, I fell into it, right? But to get there, to the falling into it, how did you end up in AV?
So for me, it wasn't necessarily falling into it in the traditional sense that most people do it, right? Because most people we know are already in their 30s or they're older, right? Or late 20s or whatever. They were in a different industry and they discovered AV, right? In my case, It's basically straight out of college, right? I went to college specifically to design AV systems, right? So it was one of the few programs in the country that actually offered a sound system design curriculum within their acoustics department at Columbia College. So for me, it was learning that and learning of that curriculum while I was at a community college, right? And a friend of mine was also going to Columbia for radio or something like that, and he mentioned to me that this program existed. So for me, it was started early, right, at the college level, and then I was hired even before I graduated for an integration firm down in Peoria, which is how I ended up there. So.
Well, and let's chat for a second about some of your instructors there at Columbia College, right? And we'll get to the fact that you eventually ended up going back as an instructor yourself, but you had some pretty heavy hitters yourself as instructors during that program. What were some of your mentors and some of the folks that kind of helped you along the way early on?
I think that biggest mentor for me in the class I learned the most from was Jeff Lipp. Right. Yeah. He has a consulting firm out of Chicago. Jeff's a great guy. Jeff had a class which was Sound System Design 1 was the first one we did. It was when I discovered what a block diagram was or a 70-volt speaker system was, right, which is probably some of the most common things we have to deal with nowadays. But his class kind of taught the very fundamentals of sound system design, right? But, it took into account that AV design and sound system design, there's science behind it, but there's an art behind it too, right? Yeah. And so for him to kind of teach that was kind of really eye-opening and what really drove me into the industry. Other than that, bench canners, Doug Jones was the department chair at the time. Doug's a great guy. He's working for Danley Sound Labs now. There's a whole gamut of instructors that were just fantastic at the school, and the program was second to none. So.
Yeah, and Jeff has a pedigree inside the industry. I mean, both of his parents have been involved in many years, and he is one of those consultants that really brings out the art in AV. And I've gotten to know him over the last 10, 12 years. Incredible guy, absolutely. So you got yourself down to kind of my old neck of the woods where I was born and raised, which is Peoria, home of Richard Pryor. That's the only thing we've got. Right, we got Richard Pryor and we've got the Peoria Rivermen. That's it.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe. No, I know. That's pretty much it anymore. Because Caterpillar left. So there you go.
Well, Cat's still here. Let's be honest, but
sort of.
There's sea levels left. There's sea levels left. Yes.
Yeah, the boss is left. But the big ginormous museum is still in downtown on the riverfront. So, So you ended up at a place actually where you and I kind of met, and we'll tell that story in a second. It does not involve much alcohol, at least. But you working with one of the groups here in Illinois called ZDI, And ZDI ended up, they expanded outside of the Midwest. And it's one of those stories that's really, really unique, I think, because having, one main office, right? And they did have a couple, ended up with a couple here, and again, still in Illinois, but you guys did work all over the country, and quite frankly, all over the world. Talk about, being there in the middle of, kind of the 2000s into the 2010s, when, AV not only was getting involved in IT, but also using, IT as a mechanism to grow, and to, quite frankly, to involve your own skills.
Yeah, so when I left college, I ended up at Thompson Electronics in Peoria. I was there for about 9 years, and the change of pace between there and going to ZDI was drastically different, right?
Yeah.
I started as a sales engineer. When I moved over to ZDI, it was more of kind of like the only engineer that they had on staff, along with maybe one other individual, right? I think by the time I left there, we had a team of like 6 or 7 engineers, and we're literally, like you said, doing just work just everywhere. We saw monumental growth over the 5, 6 years that I was there. And but I can tell you, I mean, that's an experience was very difficult. But what I learned both from there and from the sales side when I was at Thompson Electronics is what enables me to kind of do the job that I'm doing now, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that it's kind of unique and interesting is, and I have joked with Jeremy in the past that he has every award that Avixa has to offer, the exception of the Women in AV Award.
Not
And
quite, but close. Yeah.
well, close. They don't,
Yeah.
you don't have the one that they give people at the end of their career either. So there's two there. But you've been involved with Avixa for a number of years, and you mentioned the fact that you turned 40 here this year. Talk for a second about the impact, and honestly the kind of the way that Avixa has helped you grow as a AV professional, and the ways that you've been able to give back, because you've been involved in a number of councils, you've been involved in a number of standards. But so this kind of give and take has been beneficial for both Avixa and, quite frankly, the AV industry, but also for you and your profession.
Yeah, it was interesting. The guys at ZDI were very supportive of making an impact in the industry, right? And it was there that I started just doing a number of things, right? So I started teaching CTS prep at Infocom in Vegas. Was my first one that I ever taught, and that was an interesting experience. So here's this 30-year-old kid that comes in, teaching these guys that are all some cases 40s and 50s, right, that are being required by their bosses to get their CTS certification. And that was interesting because some didn't want to be there, some wanted to be there, and here's this kid that comes in and is trying to tell them what they need to do, and they've got their 40 years of experience under their belt, right? So that was an interesting learning curve. But then I seemed to find a real passion for education in AV because, as there's an abundance of jobs and no available workforce, right? So workforce development is a big thing, right? So my big thing was let's get them early. And so I started getting involved with certification, and then that's how I looped back over to Columbia. So, I went into the CTS, joined the certification steering committee, and ended up chairing the CTS program for a number of years. And during that tenure, I got brought on to Columbia to help develop the curriculum specifically geared towards AV design, not just audio. So we were in the audio department, but they knew there was a video and other component to that. And, eventually got put under the curriculum development board there and started teaching the classes there, and kind of stemmed from all of that.
Talk for a second. We mentioned that you're at your third stint in AV now. Now you're the boss, right? You're the head of IAS. What are some of the jobs or systems or projects you've been involved in that you can talk about? And obviously all of us have to put that caveat in there, because there are some that we've signed NDAs and we can't exactly speak to, but some that you can to, that you sit back and you go, you know what, that was a crazy job, or that was a hell of a job, or it's one you can go back and go, that is one that I will put a feather in my cap, and I will continue on until I retire talking to people about.
Yeah, there's a number of jobs because, we've done everything literally from a $2,000 camera ad at a church to, the Fortune 50 major markets, 911 centers, emergency operations centers. Those are the ones that I'm kind of the most proud of, right? Because there's a real impact as to, a true daily impact in a 24/7 operation, right?
Yeah.
In those kind of facilities. So I really enjoy doing those. The one that you and I worked on together in Manhattan back when you were doing programming, is crazy of a job as that was, as you know, right? It's one of the most memorable jobs, right? Because
Certainly.
I don't think I've ever worked so hard in my life, right? Doing every job you could possibly do in the in the world of AV, right? Working 18-hour days, it felt like sometimes, if not longer, when you'd pass out under the boardroom table soldering a connector, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever, right? Um, there's a lot of those. I mean, there really is. I really enjoy some of the latest technology we're putting in, the OLED stuff, the LED video wall stuff. I was fortunate enough earlier this year to do an LED wall project, and you got to remember, as the designer slash sales manager slash person in charge of the company, I don't get my hands dirty anymore. And I had an opportunity where, in the world of this pandemic, when I was stuck on a job site and needed to get it done, I was literally the only person who installed an 80-foot wide video wall, and had to figure it all out by myself and do the actual physical installation. And then finally my programmer came up to help me get the thing launched and running. But, that was really challenging, and it turned out fantastic. I mean, the thing it just looked great. So, that's definitely one of the memorable ones, I think, for me in recent months.
To talk for a second, I do want to touch on that for a second, and that's the COVID era that we are kind of coming out of and emerging out of. You mentioned the fact that you were on a job site by yourself. You were in Chicago, right? And we're not going to talk about who it was, but basically by yourself, because a lot of trades had pulled off at that point. Different parts of the year in 2020, different state and local regulations came and went. You and I both physically live in Illinois, and even us, have different regulations depending on what time of the year it was. Because I'm in Southwest Illinois, you're in Central. But as the person involved in charge, right? You are responsible for your employees' health. So talk about the challenges that this pandemic has brought, and not just financial, but also from a health standpoint. Having to come up with a PPE plan, something like a personal protection, equipment plan for your employees to stay safe, but also to continue to work financially, so you as a company can stay in business, but also so they can be supported.
Yeah. So, I mean, earlier this year, we had this large multi-million dollar project we were doing, and we were trying to close out. And, you know, everybody was shutting down. The state of Illinois was shutting down. Chicago was shutting down. The PPP loans that they gave to small businesses were not even, I mean, they were maybe being talked about in Congress, right? But they weren't a thing yet.
Yeah.
And a lot of my techs did not want to go to Chicago to finish up the job. Now, even though everything was shutting down, construction and telecommunications, which is where we fall, was still operating, was still running, right? So the job site still had a deadline, right? Of course, AV were the last people in there under crunch time anyway. So they weren't allowing, I mean, we were afraid they weren't going to allow us in, but they did, and they still wanted it done on time because everybody thought they were going to be opening up 1st of May. Everybody thought they were going to be opening up 1st of June, then 1st of July, right? So at the early time, we needed to get this project done by June 1st. And, actually it was mid-May at the time, but, my guys were scared to come to Chicago because of the lockdowns. And like you said, I had to take priority first. So without the PPP loan at that time, my thought process was, we can still continue to pay everybody to sit home and take their CTS or do whatever if I can keep this job billable, right? So it was just one of those cases where I was like, okay. And so I moved to Chicago and lived out of a hotel and kept the job billable. Now, thankfully, in the process of all that, my COO, Dave, started dealing with all the PPE stuff and all the paperwork and the monstrosity that was back at the office, and figuring all that out while I was just trying to keep this job going. And then, of course, we were able to get a PPP loan at the time, which was fantastic. So that helped a lot. And it just kind of grew from there. But developing that plan, I don't envy Dave in any way, shape, or form when it comes to doing all that paperwork, because even now, anything related to COVID is a paperwork nightmare. And I've since had to hire somebody just to deal with it. like
Wow.
just to deal with the paperwork nightmare that comes with not just the PPE stuff and all the COVID regulations, but now we're dealing with Cures grant money, right? So federal government's giving grants to a lot of communities, and a lot of that money is being spent with AV companies, right?
Yeah.
Because we're the ones providing the technology and all that stuff. So there's a lot of paperwork that goes with that, right, in order to do a lot of these projects. So we've been fortunate enough that now we're incredibly busy, and we're able to hire somebody that can help do the paperwork that I do not want to do, and I would not be skilled at doing. So
You and me, either one. So as we wrap up here, what take a look, and I've gotten away from asking people what's going to happen in the industry in the next 5 years. That's just silly to me. This year especially has proven that. So take a look at a year, right? Take a look at a year, maybe even 2 years on the offset. Where are we looking at it at 2022, 2023, both from a financial standpoint with different markets, but also as the industry in general? Where are we headed as we come out of 22 and go into 23?
I think it's going to be good in a nutshell. I mean, I really do. I'm very optimistic about it. I think the commercial real estate landscape is what's going to change most drastically, right? People are realizing now after the pandemic, oh, we don't need to spend all this money on all of these leases, right? And so we're going to see some major shifts in that kind of stuff. But for the people who still need to have an office, there's going to be a bigger focus on the technology that's required, not only internally, but for external communications. So that's going to be, I think, beneficial all around for the AV industry as a whole, which is great. We're going to see some advances in technology when it comes to not necessarily like augmented reality, but maybe down that route or those kind of things when it comes to interactivity and kiosks and signage and all that. There's a lot of really good stuff going and happening there. So that's where I'm starting to invest some of my time and research and seeing where, how we can grow with those markets, right? And figuring that out, because like we said, the everyday, cookie cutter stuff is still going to be there, but not as prevalent. There's just going to be a more of a focus on that user experience, more of a focus on reliable technology in the workspace, right? And not necessarily a lot, not necessarily every day, but reliable. Like that's what it's going to come down to, is we want stuff that they know is just going to work.
Yeah. One thing, because you picked on something that it reminded me of a conversation you and I had, good Lord, a year ago. You and I started talking about artificial intelligence in AV. And again, you mentioned this at the very beginning. There is an art to AV, but there's also a science. Where do you see AI? Does it fit at all in AV? Is there too much art for AI to have a place, or is there a place for the science part of AV to include the AI, but still need folks like you for the art?
I think you're going to need folks, not necessarily like me for the art, but for the people who can blend the art and the science, right?
Okay.
Because, AI is going to have its place. AI is going to do wonders, right, for what we do. But I mean, think about it, just how we use it today, right? Even the littlest things that are automated, if you will, or speech recognition or anything like that, it's almost comical to some points what the result is when you ask for something, or when you are produced an automatic result, right? There still has to be it's not as black and white, it's not as ones and zeros, right? Is most of this AI stuff is going to spit it out. So I think that if you can adopt and adapt to accepting this technology exists, that we're going to have it for a long time. It's here for the future, right? And figure out how to, immerse that with the artistic, skill that everybody has when it comes to AV, and blending that together, knowing how to, blend that together is what's going to be skillful. And then, you bring in that other piece of the pie, which is what we talk about for years, which is user experience too, right?
Yeah.
So there's an art to that as well, right? So you blend those three things together, and I think anyone in AV will be successful.
All right, very good. Jeremy Caldera from IAS. Congratulations again, sir, on the 2021 Hall of Fame for SCN. How do people get a hold of you or IAS?
It's iastechnology.net, at Jeremy_Caldera on the Twitter. Then I got Facebook and Instagram and all that jazz too, but I don't remember what the links are for those. But yeah, it's fantastic. fantastic. I'm humbled by this. I really am. Just to know that I've got such a passion in AV and AV education, and getting a recognition for that is like I said, very humbling. So I appreciate it. Thank you to SCN, and happy to be here.
Absolutely. So, and the one thing that I will say about Jeremy, not only is my buddy, but he's also quite young, so he's not done yet, even though he's in the Hall of Fame. So it'll be fun to see where he goes from here. So again, Jeremy Caldera.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. For us, for AVNation, go by our website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. You'll find programs like this and a host of others. And if you want to see me get interviewed and squirm, Megan Dutta interviewed me for this very nice.
Yeah, congratulations to you too as well.
Yeah, that was it.
I didn't know if I could say anything on here, but
yeah, whatever. So yeah,
it's quite a class for the Hall of Fame.
It is quite a class. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you who's at the top, but it's not me. So we'll go from there. A number of folks are really great, but yeah, check that out as well at their website, avnetwork.com. You can check out all the entire class, but also as long as Mitchell gets these done in time, you'll see all of these interviews as well. So all that and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.